At 6:31 p.m., I call the meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. This meeting is being recorded and minutes will be created by Gail Hunter from the recorded transcript. And Gail, I think, is on board. So our first item on the agenda, I don't know, this could be a love fest, huh? Is Sue Thorne and Tom Keel as co-chairs of the 375th Anniversary Celebration Committee, reporting to the board on the activities of their committee over the past 20 years. Actually, it's 3 years, right, Tom?
We actually, it was 3 years ago this month that we were appointed to the committee for a 1 year of planning and 1 year of celebration, and the celebration just got extended an extra 12 months.
And you were just having such a good time, you extended it 2 years.
That's right. We're getting ready for the 400.
Yeah, if we should all be here then.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so why don't you guys take off with this and give us your report. We've got the document that you sent us, but we'd like to share this with the public. So
Do you want to start and talk about the financials?
Okay. Let's see. Well, we approached the community and residents and businesses, and we raised really quite a bit of money, and we appreciate the $10,000 seed money that the selectmen approved, and want to go on record as having said we've repaid our loan, which we're very, very glad to do. We also raised $25,000 selling the puzzles that replicate the quilt on the town meeting, on the selectmen meeting room. And
which are fantastic. Are they sold out?
yeah, they really
They are all gone.
Yep. We're happy to report.
So we did get started in January of 2020, and we had 5 activities. And then the gala happened the first weekend over at Essex County Club, happened the first weekend in March. And 4 days after that, or 5 days after that, the governor put a stop to everything. So we were able to have a few extra activities during that year, like the thank you to the helpers parade, and a few of the other smaller activities we did, like the illumination of the town common, that didn't take, a lot of people getting too close to each other. And then this year, when the virus was slowing down a little and it was a little safer to be closer together, we did have 7 big events: the town birthday party and concert at Masconomo Park, the 4th of July boat parade. Of course, that would have to be in the harbor. A Cape Ann Big Band concert at Masconomo, movie Under the Stars at Masconomo, a high tea at the Shark's Mouth Estate, a scavenger hunt with the Manchester Essex Conservation Trust and the 375th, and then an end of the celebration parade in September. So we were able to put a large number of activities together in a little bit more than 4 months this year. At this point, we know we have a couple of outstanding bills, but they're minor. We do have a few, we have to pay those, and we've talked to town accountant about that. And we feel that after all our bills are paid, we will have a balance in the anniversary account of approximately $14,000.
So with that balance in mind, we asked our various committee members to submit suggestions for ways that they felt would be appropriate for us to spend that money. We got 13 suggestions, and we narrowed it down to 5. And interestingly enough, in many ways, all 5, but certainly 4 of the 5 related to history in the town. So we were pleased to see that. The first thing that we have approved doing is the illumination of the library clock tower. We're doing signage in the Union Cemetery acknowledging our Indigenous heritage. We have appropriated or approved seed money for the Historical Museum's 200th anniversary celebration and activities.
Of the
And
Trask House.
of the Trask House, right. And we have approved 2 photographs, one of the Memorial School before the old Memorial School and one of the new Memorial School. And those are going to be companion framed and hopefully hanging in the Selectmen's meeting room. And as those projects get completed and any residual funds that we think we were going to spend get brought back into our general account, anything that remains at the end of the day, all bills paid, all activities done, all of that money is going to the 4th of July fireworks for next year. And we expect that amount hopefully to be in the vicinity of, what, about $5,000?
Yeah, maybe a little more.
A little bit more.
So whenever we talk to anybody about the parade happening this September, after the people said, oh, that's great, a parade, their next question was, will there be fireworks that night? And we said, no, fireworks are usually in the even numbered years. But so that's one of the reasons why we thought that that might be a nice recipient account for some of our excess money to go into.
Well, and I think the other thing that we wanted to do with any projects and with any leftover funds was something that was appealing to the whole community, because it was the whole community that stepped forward and supported with funds and with their presence at a lot of these activities.
Before we talk about disbanding the committee, I think Sue and I both want to say, and we've said this to the members of the committee already, and we'll be doing it again probably after the holidays, that we want to say thank you to all the members of the 375th committee who, when we started, I figured, we'll have a meeting every month, every 6 weeks or something like that. The last meeting was agenda number 34. So we had a fairly large number of meetings. So the members of the 375th committee, many of them worked within their strengths, and many people found out they had other strengths to work and to develop to be a great working member of the committee. We also want to thank all the town employees who provided services to us around the activities. And we've been spending time talking to them also. One thing I learned as being on the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, is never start listing out people's names, because you will always leave one out and then you'll be in trouble the next day. And then the last thing is that we wanted to really thank the residents and their guests who took part in and enjoyed the different activities that were offered. We think we offered a wide variety of activities, and people really enjoyed that.
So that brings us to our request. We voted as a committee, knowing that we couldn't make the final decision, but we are recommending that, given all of the activities are completed and almost all the bills are paid, we're recommending that you disband the committee. And we're prepared to have you do it tonight if you want to. And then Tom and I will just continue in an advisory capacity to oversee those 4 projects and the fireworks donation, and authorize those bills to be paid. So that decision, or timing of that decision, is really entirely up to you guys.
And that that idea was met with the favorable comment by the town accountant when I went in and talked to Andrea about doing that, that we would approve future bills that came in from these different projects that the committee has approved. We certainly welcome the opportunity to answer any questions about those projects that you have, or anything about the committee or about disbanding the committee.
Well, I don't know if we want to disband the committee. I mean, I really think you've been doing such a good job that you should keep going. But I'd like to.
Here, here.
I'd like to just express on behalf of the entire town our heartfelt thanks to the two of you who endured absolute craziness in trying to pull off a celebratory year, and did it with grace and great public dignity. I have no idea what the conversations were like when you weren't in public, but I think we just all really, really appreciate what the two of you have done. And I was going to ask you to share with us the names of all the members of the committee. And then I just heard you say, you know, I don't want to do that because I might miss somebody. Can you give us an idea of the scope of the committee? How many members did you have?
20.
Well, we had about 25 people, but not all 25 came to meetings. In other words, some people were on there just so they would find out what's happening. For example, the police chief and the fire chief, they didn't have to come to the meetings, but you know, I mean, we
The
had,
working committee.
yeah, the working committee was in the 16 to 18 range. We had people from the historical museum, people from town, people who had been in town for a long time, people who were new to town. You know, we never thought that having one person on the committee who also was a member of the Board of Health would become so important for us to have a representative of the Board of Health on our committee until March of 2020. But yeah, we had a wide range of people, and we had a nice range of ages also. We had the people that have youngsters in the schools and available to suggest family type activities for us to sponsor also.
Great, great. Well, thank you both, and thank you very much to the committee and all the efforts that you put together to do this celebration. I feel like every time I turned around, the 375th was celebrating again. So it was wonderful for us because it kept reminding us of the heritage that we face and that we're responsible for, that we carry forward in this town. So thank you. I am sure there are other comments that other board members might want to make. Anybody want to make a specific comment about this?
I do.
Go ahead, Becky.
So what's next? I mean, Tom, Sue,
No, we got
you're
jobs.
never
for them.
not involved. Anyway, no, thank you so much. You all just, I can't imagine anybody else having spearheaded this and done what you have done. Thank you.
I don't think so. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to echo the comments that both Jeff and Becky have said. You were the right people in the right place at the right time. I'll put
For a
it the
long
right time in
time.
quotations for you, because you may argue that not necessarily the case, but we think it was, because you're seasoned leaders and you really had to roll with the punches, and there were a lot that were thrown, and to organize a celebration and then reorganize it and do it all over again. And I know there were a lot of things that had to go out the window, and you had to say, all right, we got to think up some new stuff to try and put together an appropriate celebration. And you did that with aplomb and great success. And so Manchester by the Sea is lucky to have both of you and your committee. Thank you.
Thank you both very much for handling a situation that nobody could have imagined and pulling it off as close to seamlessly as humanly possible. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, Ann.
And it has been fun. We really have had a good time.
We're
Believe it.
glad.
Good. So will you let us know when the official disbandment?
I think we're going to do that right now. But Eli, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Oh,
Well, not to belabor it, but I'll of course echo what everybody else said. It's always been a pleasure working with you guys. Thank you very much.
thanks, Eli.
Thanks, Eli.
I move to disband the 375th committee with our great congratulations.
I think we need to expand that motion a bit and to include some of the details that they were talking about of closing out the bills and supervising the final projects.
That we close out the 375th committee and request that Sue Thorne and Tom Keogh approve any future bills that come in from the projects that they outlined as being uses for their surplus funds. And any other bills that may come in. Does that cover it?
Thank you, Ann.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion of bringing this colossus to a close?
I'm absolutely surprised that someone on the board was able to second it before Sue Thorne did, because she always loves to second those kinds of motions.
Becky's taking up that cudgel.
Okay.
Not a girl, Becky.
I think, Jeff, I think you need to appropriate the funds to the July 4th fireworks celebration.
No, I think that we sort of include that as.
That was included in the way that they described it, but we can do that. And to appropriate any residual funds. Is that
Appropriate
okay, Ann?
the residual funds to the 4th of July fireworks fund.
For
Second.
2022. Okay, and that's been seconded again. Thank you. Okay, let's do a roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Becky,
yes.
Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Eli Bowling,
Yes.
and the chair, with great gratitude, votes yes. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate
Your support.
the kind words and your support. It's,
I'm not going to say thank you for your service to the town, because that's going to come later after you do more service.
okay.
Thanks,
The gift that
thanks, Tom,
keeps on
and
giving.
thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
You just go to leave. Yeah.
Okay,
Later.
so the next item on our agenda is to get my paperwork together here, is to have Paula call the Board of Health to order for a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. You need to unmute Paul.
Yes. Just thank you, everybody. There are 3 Board of Health members here this evening. We have Joan Kotler and Peter Colarusso joining me. And we wanted to have this joint meeting to explain our research and culmination of a potential enforcement policy should we need to reinstate the mask mandate, since that was something that was mentioned a couple of times by people wondering how we were going to enforce the last mask mandate that we had. So to prepare, should we need to do this again, we, with the help of Peter Colarusso, went and spoke to Todd Fitzgerald, and he will explain that conversation. And also Greg Federspiel reached out to our town council. And I will just give a quick, some quick detail about the town and how, what Peter's conversation with Todd Fitzgerald, how it all pulls together. So our town adopted a local bylaw for something called a non-criminal disposition of violations. And the Board of Health has the authority under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 21D, to issue penalties up to $300 for violations of any rules or regulations it adopts, which is subject to a specific penalty. So if we adopt a new mask mandate, we can include penalties on a sliding scale. For instance, $50 for a first offense, $150 for a second offense, $300 for a third offense, and then subsequent offenses. So as much as we didn't really want to go to a monetary penalty, because the whole argument that we've had about the mandate mostly comes from our business owners and their sentiment that our mandate is seriously affecting them and taking business away from them. So to impose a monetary policy seems to add insult to injury, but not really sure we can get around it. And hopefully we won't ever have to write a ticket, but one never knows. So we must be prepared. And I will hand it over now to Peter so he can explain his conversation with Todd Fitzgerald, because it all ties into this non-criminal disposition for the violations.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you're aware, we have a staff that works 26 hours a week. So availability and the authority to issue citations were what I spoke with Todd about. And Todd suggested we break it into two components. One is a client, a customer who was not cooperating. And that would be where the manager of the facility would advise them that they have to wear a mask and or leave. If they refused, the manager would explain that it was the facility that's going to get penalized. If they don't, would they please cooperate? If they wouldn't, then the manager could call the police, and the police would then go down and again, try with the educational approach. If that doesn't work, they would issue a citation for trespassing, and all the procedures and fines and all that are already on the books. So the Board of Health would not be involved with that aspect of it. The other side would be if the business or the organization itself refused to comply. In that case, the police would respond to a notice that the organization is refusing to wear masks. They would go down, they would document that, they would explain, you really, please wear a mask, this is the mandate, blah, 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 try to educate them. Assuming they're unsuccessful in convincing them, they would write a report documenting the incident, and then they would turn that to the Board of Health, at which point we would have to take action. So Todd was very cooperative. He couldn't have been more helpful. He even helped write the copy that I had forwarded to you folks. So I'm most grateful for his input. Are there any questions on that aspect?
Board of Selectmen have any questions?
I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead, Becky.
I understand the reluctance with this. I certainly do. And I don't envy your jobs at this point. But my question is, are we, the enforcement policy, are we in line with other communities? Is that similar to what they're doing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
we reached out and the communities that have an enforcement policy, it's all violation-based, monetary-based.
And Paula, may I add that the other communities that have enforcement policies have a full-time health inspector that's working 40 hours a week and is available to go out and do the inspections, or not inspections, but respond to the complaints. And they're authorized to give citations as a health inspector. So we're only at 26 hours. I'm assuming that a lot of, this is a pure guess, believe me, that a lot of the activity that's the non-compliant would probably occur Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when obviously there's nobody in the health department to respond anyway. So we don't have the staff to really do it. So we had to reach out to somebody who would be staffed already during those hours.
If I may have a follow-up question to that. So when you say the communities that have a full-time health agent, how do we compare in size to those communities?
Well,
What communities are you citing? in those?
Rockport had a fine policy. Salem, which of course is much bigger, but Essex, of course, is similar to ours. They do have a full-time health agent, but they just haven't instituted a mask mandate. So,
but do they have an enforcement policy?
well, I'm sure if they instill a mask mandate that they'll be considering one, and they'll look to other communities. Rockport did have one. We had Ellen reach out to the other boards of health when this came up, when we still had the mask mandate in effect. And that was the research that she had gathered for us.
Thank you very much. It's good to kind of know what we have in the area. So thank you.
Mhm.
Peter, you had shared with me the information from Colin Codner over in the Greater Lynn Chamber of Commerce. And it seems like their policy is a little bit different in terms of the customer non-compliance, where they follow a remind and report procedure that's written to politely remind the guest of the local mask requirement. If non-compliance continues, write down the date and time of the incident. And step 3, take no further action. Do not attempt to confront the customer. An important step in order to protect staff from any verbal or physical confrontation with individuals in non-compliance with the city order. And then finally, reach out to the local health department if non-compliance by customers becomes an issue for the business, not an individual contact to the health department, but if it becomes an issue. That's a little different than Salem's process, which I believe does involve the institution of a fine that's given by their health agent. And I'm not as clear on Rockport. Can you comment on that?
Would you like me to comment on it?
Sure.
I would favor the Lynn approach if the businesses would feel comfortable doing that. I don't know how they feel about that approach. Quite frankly, when I was speaking to Todd, he doubted that any business would drop a dime on their customer anyway. So it was more of a educational, not a threat, but an educational point, the discussion point.
I think
Think-
also where we needed the help is if the actual establishment didn't comply. There's two sides to the coin. If
Absolutely.
the actual establishment doesn't comply, it's more important to have something in place. I think that we have had conversations, especially Peter has had conversations with owners of establishments downtown, and they'll either put masks out or the customer will turn around and leave, or it's a pretty quick and easy disposition of a person walking through the door without the mask. They either get frustrated and leave, or masks are provided for them, or they'll go out and get a mask and then come back. It's not so much the customer, it's more the establishment. That was the weak link that we had when we had a mask mandate before, because we did have some reports about establishments not complying. So we can't really do this half and half. We have to have a full circle enforcement policy for both customers and establishments. So we're just trying to put something together that makes some sense.
And Jeff, personally, I could support either approach.
Well, there's two different, as you said, there's two different enforcement issues. One is if an establishment is refusing to follow the orders and mandates of the Board of Health, and another is if a customer is. I think it's going to be really important if you, in instituting any kind of enforcement scheme, that it's written out very clearly, step by step, in terms of what the expectations are, whether it's a customer or whether it's an employer or an employee. I like what Lynn's written. I've liked what I saw when I read Salem's policy, that it was a very clear policy written. Not just, okay, we have fines now. There needs to be a procedure that goes along with how that enforcement occurs. And I heard what you said about your conversation with Todd. Have you written that up for the Board of Health?
Yes.
Okay, and it's clear step by step, the way that Lynn is a clear step by step?
No, not in that much detail, no. I thought that the business end of it was pretty clear cut with Todd's approach, with our approach.
Yep.
Pretty simple. We can obviously write that up in more detail. The
Okay.
part where I was not sure of was the customer approach. Either approach is going to take some activity by the organization, and I wanted to keep the extra work for them down to a minimum, if possible. I personally, I can't see anyone standing there arguing over a mask to the point where they would have to call the police. I think that would be highly unlikely, but be that as it may, we still have to assume that that may occur and then detail the action that the store owner or the organization can follow. But again, as to that part of it, we can take the Lynn approach, the Salem approach, or we can do the trespassing. Whichever there's more comfort level with.
And this is why we thought it would be a good conversation to have with the Board of Selectmen as well, because we just want the approach to be something that we get a lot of feedback on, a lot of input on. We can take the Lynn approach for the customer and take the violation approach with the establishment. We can have a hybrid if that seems to resonate more with everybody.
I wonder, rather than saying a business has to follow remind and report as it's outlined in the Lynn document, to say we would recommend that you follow this procedure with customers. That you make politely remind the customer of the local mask requirement. And then if non-compliance continues, without doing it in the customer's face, write down when it occurred, what the date and the time was, and take no further action. They can choose to take an action of bringing it up to the health department if they're having problems. That's how I read the Lynn approach, but it could be a good guideline for dealing with customers. And that's the educational part that Peter was referring to.
Paula, this is Joan. I think you have a good idea of combining different procedures from the different towns, like Jeffrey suggested, and changing a little bit of the language.
I think once we vote on it conceptually, we can get the step-by-step details ironed out.
Yep.
and presented. We have to agree to something on the conceptual level and then execute it.
I'd like to hear from other board members in the Board of Selectmen what your reaction is to the fine structure of 50 for first offense, 150 second offense, 300 third offense.
Yeah, Jeff, if I can comment, I'd like to have a written warning in there up front.
Yes.
First step. A written warning. In other words, it has gone through the process with, I guess, the police writes something up. There's a formal offense that has been filed, and then a warning goes in there. I mean, the way I read things now is that all of these penalties really are just, most of them are associated with the establishment and with the establishment's employees. The establishment can't really, can ask if there's a client problem. They can't be fined for the client's offenses. They can ask and ask them to comply. I assume that all of the establishments need to provide masks if people come in and don't have one. They should have that as a standby, as a standby for those who might not have masks. But I do agree with Chief Fitzgerald's comment that, are they going to, quote, drop a dime on clients? I don't think in general they are. They should perhaps write something down, but I think that the chance that a merchant is going to do that is not high. So I would want that warning, though, in a written warning in the first offense.
Would you be comfortable replacing the $50 fine with a written warning?
If anybody has any ideas, we could do a written warning as a first offense. We could do something less for a second offense instead of 150. We could certainly do more minor penalties, like a $50 second offense and a $100 third offense. We can legally go up to $300. These are just ideas. at this point in terms of how much people get fined. These are establishments that refuse to comply.
I agree. Your question, Peter, is, I mean, how many offenses are you going to go through here to get up to the maximum?
Right.
Three's, I mean, I'm okay with warning 100, 300.
I mean, if they get to the 300 point, there's obviously other issues.
Yeah, there are issues there. You got a bigger problem. This is not going to solve it.
Right.
Okay, since that door has been opened, is there any way to solve the question of a recalcitrant business, which is prepared to pay $300 a day for the purpose of not having to require their patrons to wear masks?
Yes, you can go up to $300 and then there can be subsequent offenses. So I would imagine that if a report is called in to the board and the board requests the police to go down in lieu of a Board of Health agent, the police go down. And if they were to check back day 2, day 3, day 4, as many days as the business isn't in compliance, that the offense can be written. So in effect, yes, it can go on for as many days as the business is not.
That's not what I was asking exactly. Suppose a business finds it to their advantage to pay you $300 a day, not to wear masks in their business.
I see. So you give them X amount of days and then actually there is, I was reading the enforcement that the town council had sent. And you can, so in lieu of penalties, you can also do permit suspensions. So for instance, there were a couple of different methodologies. So you could, for a first violation, you could suspend their permit for 1 to 7 days. For a second violation, you could suspend their permit for 7 to 30 days. And for a third violation, you could suspend their permit for 30 days or revoke their permit. So we could certainly get a little bit deeper in the detail of penalties. And after a third offense, we could revoke their permit to do business.
After a
And-
notification of a week and a hearing.
We could do that, of course, yes. So you're suggesting that they have a warning as a first offense, a $100 penalty as a second offense, a $300 penalty as a third offense, and for subsequent offenses up so we've already up to 3. So at the 7th time we're visiting this business, we then revoke their permit after they've had 4 $300 penalties, then their permit is revoked.
Well, I think if you advise them that, listen, after the 300, this is your 4th offense, please appreciate the fact that we can take action to revoke your permit, I suspect that will end it right there. Nobody is going to force the issue to that point. So I don't know how many $300 fines we need to do before that, as long as we advise them of the potential of losing their permit. I mean, that's self-destructive to continue to do it at that point.
I understand. To get the details down so that when we write this up, it is very clear and defined. I'm just asking how many offenses do they get before they get their permit suspended or revoked? how many days does it go on for? What makes sense? It doesn't make sense that they would go up to a fourth offense anyway, but I mean, at what point do you say, all right, that's it, your permit is revoked? After a week? After 5 days?
I
Do we-
don't go by
do-
days, I think we should go by offenses. Because if it's an offense on a Friday, Board of Health's not gonna know about it till Monday anyway. So by the time, they get that, it could be Wednesday, it could be a whole week just to enforce one offense. So I don't think we can go by the number of days. We need to go by the number of offenses. Does that make sense?
It does, but if the police are the ones who are helping us with writing these violations, they would certainly be able to go back the next day to see if the situation has changed.
Yeah,
As opposed-
but if we have not responded to it, it's not really fair to continue to penalize them. If the police go on a Friday and XYZ store is not having masks, and they don't on Saturday and Sunday, but we haven't said a word to them, I don't think we can escalate the fines. We have to count that as one event until we respond. And then the next event comes after we respond. I don't know, that's just my feeling.
Peter, I'm not quite sure what the response is that you're referring to.
Well, if we get a notice from the police and we say this is a first offense, we send them a letter saying, this is your first offense, please be advised, blah, 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 blah. The second offense would be $100 fine. Third offense would be $300 fine. Fourth offense or whatever, after that, we reserve the right to revoke your permit. They have to be made aware, I think, that they're not in compliance and that there's a penalty for not being in compliance before we start adding on additional fines.
Okay. There's two hands up. Joan's hand up was first.
Well, I think Eli's was, but why would the police be involved with the businesses? I thought the police part was for situations where the client was behaving badly in the place of business.
Joan, the police have to help the Board of Health because we don't have the staff to send a Board of Health agent to respond to a complaint. So we have to send the police for us because we don't have a health agent to send, which would be the normal course of events.
Okay, I get it.
And Joan, all they would do would be to document the occurrence. They wouldn't do anything else.
Okay,
And then
I'd like to, go ahead, Peter.
and then they would send the report to the Board of Health, and we would have to take it from there.
Okay, I'd like to recognize Eli Bowling.
I think maybe you're overanalyzing the fairness of making the business owners aware of when they're in the red, so to speak. I think that the schedule of when you get to the fourth one, first of all, you write the policy down, all the businesses will be aware of it, you publish it to them, right? So if they get a third violation, they'll receive a fine. They'll be well aware that they're in the starting to get into the red zone. If the Board of Health then issues a fourth citation, at that point they could say, in a week, we're scheduling a hearing. Whether or not the business receives subsequent violations at $300 a day after that is independent of that. At the end of the week, there will be a hearing and you'll make the decision about revoking permits. You just decouple them at that point. So that fourth violation comes in, they get a notification that there's a hearing. If there are additional violations after that, they still get the $300 fines. And what happens. The businesses are well aware of, will be well aware of what the policies are, and they'll have very reasonable notification.
Okay. Well, if anybody, if we don't have any other feedback, I think what makes sense is for us to put together a policy. We are meeting Thursday morning. We could nail out the details of the policy, and I was hoping to vote something in place this evening, but I think it makes more sense to have it all detailed out and present it at our meeting Thursday morning.
Okay, let me just double check, Paula, on, Joan, is your hand still up because you haven't put it down?
No, I couldn't figure out how to put it down.
Okay, bottom of the Zoom screen on the right-hand side of all the icons, there's a lower hand icon. Do you see it?
Yeah, I just
Beautiful.
did it.
Beautiful.
Okay, thank you.
And then Ann's got a question. Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, as you're working out the policy, particularly in where it's getting onerous, I would like to see something that sets a time range. So 3 violations over 6 months is one thing, but 3 violations in a week.
Mhm.
So
Hello?
just a suggestion for as you were writing this out.
Thank you.
I'd like to add a suggestion as well, Paula, which is that if a business gets a warning, they got the letter from the board that says, if there is a second violation, this is what will happen. If there's a third violation, we'll consider a board hearing regarding your license. So that the letter is given out at the warning stage, where no money has changed hands and no license suspensions have been done.
Mhm.
But at the warning stage, a letter comes out that says, this is what happens next if there's a second offense, and if there's a third offense.
Okay, we'll be working on that between now and Thursday morning.
Great.
I think we appreciate your time and your input. I think that we've taken up enough of your time because you certainly have plenty more to do after this.
We have a lot on our agenda, but we really want to say that, I want to say, and I don't want to speak for the entire board, I can speak for myself, that while no one wants to see fines levied against our businesses, warnings or fines or suspensions levied against our businesses, no one wants to see a problem with this virus spreading further. And the bottom line here is to try and contain the virus. So I think the actions are necessary. It's not a threat. It's a set of consequences and an enforcement policy. So it's been asked for, and you guys are working hard to get it there. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, I think I should adjourn the Board of Health portion of this joint meeting. So I'd like to make a motion. It is 7:25 PM that the Board of Health adjourn this joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen.
Second, Joan.
Aye, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay. It's a tough discussion, and it's an important discussion to have. so that we have clarity around what the consequences are for not following a mandate, should we have to reinstate. I know that the board has also been struggling with trying to have a clear set of metrics on the reinstatement of a mask mandate. Let's move on to our next agenda item. I thank you for your patience in having to wait. We had you scheduled for 7:10. This is National Grid on the storm response and the resiliency measures. Greg, do you want to introduce this?
So we have tonight with us Faith Hassel. She's with National Grid. She's part of their community liaison team, and has a very short but informative set of slides that she would like to share. So Jeff, if you could allow her to share screen, that will get us.
I could if I were the host. I'm not the host. Who's hosting this?
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I don't have.
I've not been able to figure that out, actually. I was looking.
When I came in, the recording was going and the host had already signed in. So
Well, that's interesting.
Actually,
Paula, are you the host?
no, I am not the host, but I wanted to say when I signed in, Becky was already in the meeting, so I think she may be the host.
No.
No, I came in and it
All right,
already.
let's get
said
this
recording.
straight. Greg, do you have the host controls?
No, I came in late this evening.
Hey, Jeff,
I could go back out and come in.
I'll
Eli.
pop out. I'll pop out. I'll sign in and claim host.
Go ahead.
Be right back.
Faith, this is not usually what happens in these meetings, just so you know.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
We're a lot more organized than this, but I'm not sure how that happened.
That's really curious.
It was already recording when I
When I came in, it was recording and
Yep. Same here.
But I don't see anyone listed as host. That's very odd.
It's a ghost host.
It's the ghost host.
Does that mean there's no way out?
that's right.
That is a great question.
So it looks like Eli is coming on.
All right.
Can you assign me as co-host, Eli?
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you.
Faith.
Okay, so Faith, you want to do a presentation and you need to be able to share your screen. So
I can get started and then once.
there you go. You should be able to, you should see a green share screen and
Cool, I got it.
got it. There you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Can you see my screen now?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, great. Can you still see my screen?
We can still see your screen and you're in your PowerPoint.
Perfect. So first off, thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Faith Hassel, like you had mentioned, and I am the Community and Customer Manager at National Grid to the town of Manchester by the Sea. I recently took over for Joe Morocco, who was the last community manager. We kind of shuffled up some of the town and had somebody else join our team. So I'm the new community manager. In addition to me, there is an individual by the name of Doug Wagner, who typically will be your community liaison during storms. So each community gets one person dedicated to them from a community perspective. So we bring additional people on during storms. And it's really nice to be able to come and present to you tonight. about how the electrical infrastructure works in the town of Manchester by the Sea. And I understand that, outages cause significant human impact. And so we'll also be talking about reliability for the town and some of the next steps that we have planned for Manchester. So with that, just to give you an overview of the electrical infrastructure for the town, National Grid does serve 2,663 electric customers in the town of Manchester by the Sea. And the majority of those customers are fed from our East Beverly substation and our Manchester substation. So when we look at areas and municipalities, we look at them by feeders. So you'll see here 7 boxes, and each one of those boxes represents a different feeder in the community. And each of those feeders serve a certain portion of the community. One thing to note is that in each box, you'll see CS, which means customer served. And if you were to add all of those up, it would be far greater than the 2,663 Manchester customers. And that's because some feeders can run across multiple municipalities. So just to review a few of these. So we have the 51T1, which serves around 7,200 customers. It comes from our East Beverly substation, and it's a long feeder. It's about 115 miles, 70 of which is overhead, 46 is underground. The 51T3 serves about 2,400 customers, also comes from our East Beverly substation, and is around 37 miles. And then we have the 28L2, which serves around 3,000 customers, and it actually comes from our West Gloucester substation, and it's almost 30 miles. So those are the ones that kind of run between multiple municipalities. Then we have from our Manchester substation, we have the 23H1, H2, H3, and H4. Altogether, those 4 feeders serve about 1,000 customers, and altogether are about 19 miles worth of circuit miles. So to meet the electrical needs of Manchester, we utilize 921 poles and approximately 440 distribution transformers. So with that, so what does that look like, on a map and to the community? So this is what we call a feeder map, and each color represents a different feeder. So solid lines represent overhead, and the dashed lines represent underground. So the dark blue line represents the 51T1. The dark green that kind of overlaps some of that dark blue that runs across the entirety of Manchester all the way into Gloucester, or all the way up north. That is the 51T3. The brown on the right-hand side is our 28L2, which comes from our West Gloucester substation. And then the 4 Manchester substation feeders are primarily downtown, and then we have 2 of them that run downtown and up Summer Street. And then we have the 23H3, which runs the Proctor Street, Smith Point Road. And then we have the 23H2, which runs up Essex, up by the Essex Country Club, and then also covers what's directly across from Graves Island. So with that, each of these feeders operate kind of like as their own independent, smaller electric grid. So that's why, if you were to see like a motor vehicle accident up by the Essex Country Club, and they hit a pole and the pole came down or the transformer came down, it would just be some of those customers beyond that pole that would be impacted, and not the rest of the customers on that feeder, and not the rest of the community, because we have the ability to isolate outages. And that's typically how we strategize and how we address certain outages. So if there's any way for us to use the devices on our poles or within any of our transformers or substations we will do everything we can to isolate, to minimize the outage and get as many customers restored while we make the repairs. So some customers could inevitably still be out, but ideally we'll do everything we can to isolate and minimize the outage. So with that, we can talk about reliability statistics. So as a utility, we're measured on several different things. Three of the things that I want to talk about are the SAFE index, the SAIDI index, and the CAIDI index. So the SAFE index is the System Average Interruption Frequency Index, and that just basically means how the average number of interruptions a customer can expect to experience in a given year. The SAIDI is the System Average Interruption Duration Index, and that's the average number of minutes across the total population. So it could be any population. For this, we did just the Manchester by the Sea population. And then you have CAIDI, which is the Customer Average Interruption Duration Index, and that is just the average number of minutes for those impacted customers. So that number will almost always be higher because it's just the impacted customers. So I did take the last 4 years average so we run these numbers for each town and each community each year. And I took the 4-year average for Manchester by the Sea, and your SAFE score was 0.489. National Grid's goal is 1. So on average, we would expect, customers can expect to experience one outage in a year. So because your number is 0.489, that equates to customers can expect to experience an outage every 2 years. One thing to keep in mind, these numbers don't include major events, so storms. Those things are not actually included in these metrics. They are typically out of our control. And I did look at those numbers to see if there was any drastic difference between, your safety for storms versus your safety for for just blue sky issues, and there was no drastic difference. And then for your SAIDI score, so on average, customers, if they were to have an outage across the entire population, again, 133 minutes. But I think the more telling number is the CAIDI number. So of the customers impacted, they would expect to experience around 300 minutes of an outage. So with that, I did also look at all of the causes for outages in the past 4 years in Manchester. So the major contributors have been anything from cable faults, motor vehicle accidents, tree damage, tree contact. We did have several animal contacts as well. Some dig-ins from construction and digging into our cable. There wasn't anything particularly unusual or extreme, but it was a collection of all of those things that have happened. So with that, just to talk about a few of the things that we're going to be doing in the next year or so. So upcoming reliability work. So like I just mentioned, one of the contributors is tree issues. And so we will begin trimming out one of our feeders next year, the 23H3, and it will be included in our hazard tree mitigation plan, which is a proactive program where we have our forestry supervisor go out and assess all of the trees within a certain radius of the actual power lines. And if they deem the tree to be some sort of hazard, whether it be dead or ill or leaning, we would work with the town and the customer, if it's a privately owned tree, to talk through about removing it and be proactive rather than waiting for it to fall and take our power lines out. In addition to tree trimming, cable replacement is something that we also do in Manchester by the Sea. Back on the feeder map, you can see that there is a significant number of miles of underground in the community, which is great for aesthetics and just in general, but it can elongate outages because sometimes it does require digging or fault finding or pulling new cable. So it does increase the outage time. And, we did notice, and, we had concerns from the neighbors on Old Neck Road and Eagle Road. So I believe it was this past year. It could have been earlier last year, but we did replace all of the underground cable on those two streets. So they were impacted by several outages in the last several years. So they are all set and they have new cable, and we do actually have another reconductoring or cable replacement project planned for next year on Summer Street. So we are actively trying to improve the area as well. And then lastly, in the recent weeks and months, I've started to have some internal conversations with our planning teams about rebuilding our Manchester substation. So also a great thing to be improving and bringing in the newest technology and taking out aging infrastructure. So that is also something that we're investing in for Manchester by the Sea. With that, I want this to be a continuing conversation, and I'm always here. I'm just a phone call away, and Joe has spoken very highly of the municipal leaders here at Manchester by the Sea, and I hope to have a similar relationship. And I'm happy to take any questions or concerns, or if I didn't share anything that you'd like to hear more about, feel free to raise your hand. I actually will stop sharing so I can actually see you all, because I can't see you all. Go back to my screen. Okay.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
When was the last time that the Manchester substation was retrofitted or upgraded?
I don't have the exact date, but I can definitely talk to our substation supervisor tomorrow and send you an email and let you know. We do modifications along the way. I don't know when it was first installed offhand, but the project I'm talking about, it would be an actual complete rebuild. So, yeah, but I can definitely ask that question.
And when that rebuild is in process, how does that impact the provision of electrical services?
It wouldn't. We have to plan it in a way that we would build the new substation before decommissioning the old substation. So electrical, there would be no impact to electric service.
So it would be a complete replacement of that substation.
Yes.
And what's the time frame for that?
So right now we're looking at 2023/2024.
Okay. Becky, you have your hand up?
I do. You actually asked one of the questions I was going to ask, which was when. I had a question though regarding the 5-hour average power outage time.
Mm-hmm.
The 300 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We have a pretty aging demographic here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a very long time for some of the people in our community. Are these, when you figured that average outage, did that also include the natural events that you mentioned that didn't factor into some of the other numbers?
I did not factor those into these numbers.
Because I think that's something that we need to look at. And
Okay.
I know that you talk about doing the trimming, and I did notice that there was quite a large number of underground, which is
Mm-hmm.
not only aesthetically pleasing, or more pleasing. It also doesn't have trees falling on it or whatnot. But so with the trimming, well, before I go on, I would like to find out if there's a way we could determine what the overall number of minutes of outages, which include the natural events, to give us a more complete picture. And if it's possible to see if there's any areas which are more susceptible to outages. And that way we can possibly look at how we might help some of those people. And then my last question is, with the trimming out, do you all have arborists who do that? Because I've seen some people out, and I know on our streets where I live, in the past when trees have been trimmed, they've been topped, they've been, or pollard, whatever you call that. And branches have been left. Has that been, this was probably 2 years ago, so things might have changed. But in terms of that, are you all kind of doing more to keep from damaging the trees?
Yes.
And cleaning up after?
Yes. So any planned tree trimming, our arborists do follow specific guidelines that are created by the arborist organizations to make sure that we are trimming in healthy ways and making sure, I don't know the specifics of it, but however you cut a limb off,
right,
the appropriate portion and where you should be cutting it off, we are supposed to be following those guidelines, and we do. If you find that we aren't, or you have a concern, absolutely let me know. And with regards to cleaning up, so any planned trimming, we will always take away the tree limbs that we cut down, unless somebody asks us to leave them for fire or whatnot. Some people do, some people don't. But the majority of the time we take them away. The only time that we don't take branches away is when they've come down from a storm. So if it's a storm related issue, then unfortunately the tree branches are left.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Faith, but I would like to get some more information, more specifics about the outages and locations of the extended outages.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
We've got some hands up for comment, but I'd like to start with John Round. I'd like to finish up with board comments and then turn it over to public comment.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Faith. That was informative. I do want to echo the one thing that Becky said. Yeah, we'd like to see all of the outages, whether they were operational, internal, or whether it's storm. Your customers, it doesn't make too much difference to a customer what the reason is. They just know stuff is out. And it would be great if there could be some sort of a line that would be drawn on that and your initiatives. I assume that when something goes out and it is due to the elements, that you know the time that it was out. When the repair crew shows up, they know why. I assume that your managers get information as to why it was, whether somebody ran into a pole or whether it was a tree or some other thing. And I don't know if underground lines, other than the fact that they age, if they ever have a problem with regard to the weather, but if they do, I'd be interested in learning that. And I'd like to know if the budget that you've got for repairing or for taking care of the trees, are you reacting to that in a stronger way than you have in past years? There've been more problems in recent years, and is your initiative to do tree trimming, is that something that has grown relative to last year or the year before, or is this just, you're just doing what you always do? Because I think people want to know that there's some sort of initiative to be more aggressive in terms of addressing the problems. And the last question I have, and I don't know, I assume it probably can't be done, is I see all of these, I guess you had what, 3 or 4 substations that distribute. Are there any connections between these substations such that if power goes out in one particular area, you can connect from another substation? Because all of these areas dovetail each other. And it seems to me there might be connections. Now, I understand there might be capacity problems, but is that doable in some instances where you can shift electrical sources from one station to another, at least temporarily?
Great questions. So we'll start off with the tree trimming. So tree trimming is actually done on a 5-year cycle across the entirety of Massachusetts. It's actually overseen at a federal level because from a transmission level, our transmission lines run interstate. So tree trimming is just always done on a 5-year cycle. So, you know, the feeder that I was talking about that is up for trimming, it is up for trimming because it's on the 5-year cycle. However, the hazard tree mitigation plan is a few years old, but it is a newer initiative where it is a proactive approach where we are going out, identifying those trees that inevitably are going to fall because they're diseased or dying. And that is an additional initiative that we're doing, which we'll be reviewing on this feeder that's up for trimming as well. So unfortunately, like, yes and no. So yes, there is an additional initiative. Our tree trimming is just run on a 5-year cycle. And then your second question about connections and like redundancy. So when I had shown the feeder map and talked through the different boxes, so the 51T1 and 51T3, so that T means that they are the same voltage. So those, like you had said, capacity issues is one of those things that we have to monitor. So if there is the ability to switch customers over to a different feeder, if there is a drastic issue on one feeder, as long as we have capacity, we would be able to do that. So yes, there is that opportunity. Additionally, for like the 23H1, H2, H3, H4, all of those H's signify same voltage. So as long as they're in the same area and whatnot, there could be some overlap.
So has that actually happened in some of the outages? Do you know? Manchester?
I would have to go back and look through each outage to find out. I'm sure at some points we have done it. I just can't speak to one of them at the moment.
I mean, that would be invisible to customers, but it would be good if they know that there is a plan A and a plan B. Right now, I think the impression is you got plan A and that's it. Right. And when you're out, until lines go back up, nothing happens. But it would be good to know where that's possible, and if you can increase that capability in areas in town.
For sure.
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, Eli.
So not to belabor tree trimming, I'll add my voice to the mix on tree trimming. I have observed in the past very aggressive tree trimming, and I definitely would like for that to be well coordinated with the town, just to, because once they're trimmed, they're trimmed, and it can be pretty devastating. Second, a question about outage durations. There are different durations for outages, I think, for events based on what the category of event is, and there's going to be some minimum numbers for those. So, for example, I think the high voltage Cape Ann loop, what's that, a 17,000 volt line? In order to work on that, there's different procedures that have to be done. And just from a procedural standpoint, if you have an issue with that line, my understanding is there's going to be a different minimum time for how long it's going to take to respond to those issues. Same thing if a transformer blows, right? Some things are going to be able to fix quicker, but sometimes some things are going to have basically a minimum time before you're going to be able to resolve it. Do you keep statistics on what those categories are? And to what extent do those events dominate the statistics for outage duration within the Manchester numbers? And I'm not expecting you to have that number off the top of your head. But does my question make sense? Is that data that you have, you guys track and have available?
So I just want to make sure I understand this. So yes. So for example, like if an animal makes contact with an insulator on top of our pole, the animal gets blown off, a fuse will release at the transformer. That is a much lesser timeline to repair. Typically a troubleshooter will go over, replace the fuse, and power will be back up. Whereas if there's a motor vehicle accident and a pole is cracked and a transformer falls, that could take several hours. We have to set a new pole, transfer the new line, transfer the wires over to the new pole, reset a transformer. So I got that far in your question. I'm sorry. So what was the next part of the question?
So the next part of the question is, to what extent do those larger duration ticket items dominate the outage statistics in Manchester?
I see what you're saying. I can definitely look into that. I have the information. I just don't know that I would be able to digest it in the next few minutes to be able to accurately describe it for you.
Yeah.
But I can get that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of hands up for public comment. Sandy, could you please
Great.
take and identify yourself and where you live?
Okay, Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. I just want to basically echo two things and also have a question for Faith. One is with the tree trimming, both for electric and for telecom. I think it's really important that there's coordination with Tom Henderson and/or anyone that is the tree warden at the time to avoid top-offs, etc. I think that has been an issue in the past and need to make sure that that gets coordinated, and hopefully by, I don't know if 23 means you won't be doing anything next year and that you'll be trimming in 23, but by then hopefully there'll be a good inventory as well to relate to on the trees. Second, want to reiterate what other people said about wanting to understand more about all outages, not just non-storm outages. I think it's important for the town to not only know its statistics, but understand it in comparison to the state, in comparison to other towns. I do have a question for Faith in that in one of the last storm outages, there was a long delay in one area that seemed to relate to something coming not from what I was hearing as a station, but something that came from Essex, but was impacting Manchester. So if you could sort of explain a little bit more about what that means, because it sounds like Manchester wasn't compromised, but it was impacted not by any of, I can't remember the term you used, but arenas that you were going over.
For sure. So that has to do with how the feeders run across multiple municipalities. So depending on where the issue is, if there is no device further along on the feeder. So let me think of the way to explain this. So if something was to happen closer to the substation in a different municipality, the remainder of the line would be out unless think it was Selectman John that had mentioned, you know, there like that redundancy in a line, and can you switch people to a different line? If there's also damage on that alternate line, and we can't switch people to that alternate line, the majority or the remainder of that feeder will be out. So if the incident happens, you know, towards the tail end of the feeder, the going back to the substation would not be impacted, and it would just be the people beyond that point further away from the substation. If you have the specific area that that you remember that was impacted from the last storm in October, I mean, I'm happy to look it up to find out more of the details of what actually happened in Essex. If you can give me a street or anything like that, I'm sure I could find something.
Yeah.
Does
I
that
would
make sense?
say
My general explanation?
Yeah, the western part, I guess, of town. So Old Essex, I think part of Pine Street. So the area that was out that direction, other parts of towns was restored a lot faster than that. And it seemed to potentially be connected with, you know, Upper School Street into Essex. So that's why I was wondering if there was some part of town that was dependent on a station in Essex, not necessarily in Manchester or Beverly or what was reviewed earlier.
I would have to look more specifically into that. None of Manchester is fed via a substation in Essex, but let me do a little more digging on that specific one from October for sure.
Okay, thank you. One recommendation, I think in the future, it might be interesting to do something educational for the town to understand how our electricity works. It's really fascinating. Thank you.
Sure, happy to come back. I love talking about this, so.
Sandy, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
Where did you get your information that outage that you're referring to on Pine Street and Old Essex Road, I assume it's Pleasant Street as well, and Upper School, that was connected to Essex? How'd you find that out?
So actually Pleasant came back. Old Essex was not. And I actually live on Old Essex. So I was looking into details regarding when that electricity would go back. I'm not sure where I got that information, but I think when I had reported it or was investigating it, it seemed to be connected with an area that went up Southern Ave and sort of, I want to say northwest. It all sort of came back. It was associated on the grid that they were showing that particular outage, all associated on the map. So that was coming from the national grid and the map, and I was trying to locate it all. But you know, the grid could have combined a couple different locations together into one group, but it was associated all together.
Sure, okay.
I hope that helps.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Faith?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah Mellish.
Yes, so it's my understanding that there is a significant number of customers in Manchester that come through the East Beverly substation. And it's my understanding that there is a 50-year-old cable running from Salem to that substation along the train tracks. And you are trying to replace it by going underneath the streets of Beverly, and that residents in Beverly are pushing back on those enhancements. And I'm wondering if you have a plan B.
So the project that you're talking about is to replace our 115 transmission cable line. And right now we do have the siting board approval. So this kind of project, because it a large infrastructure improvement, and also the voltage of it is a high voltage. It does require us to go before the Energy Facility Siting Board, and they grant approval for this kind of project. So right now we do have approval from the Energy Facility Siting Board for the approved route. We are continuing to work with the city, and we're hoping to present before the City Council in January to talk more about the route. But right now, the route that we have is approved by the State Siting Board. So there is no plan B because it is approved at the moment. But we continue to work with the city to gain final approval on a granted location for the actual cable.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to take just a couple more questions. Ann, you've had your hand up a couple of times, so I'm going to take you first and then Steve Gang.
Very simple question, Faith. Can we get a copy of your slides, and do we have your permission to put them on our website? I think they're very informative, and the rest of the town would probably like to see them.
Sure, absolutely. I have shared it with Town Administrator Greg, so feel free.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question, Ann. Mr. Gang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll second what Sandy and Ann have said about how valuable it is to share some of this information. Thank you, Faith. It's kind of like peering into one of life's great mysteries. Where does all that power come from? I have a question. I should reveal I'm a statistician, so I pay a lot of attention to averages when people give them. And so I have two questions. One is, do you know the median as opposed to the average? And the second question is, I get the data from a transfer switch in my house every time power goes out and the generator needs to decide whether or not to come on. So I know that in fact there are more than a dozen short outages a year on Norwood Avenue, at least where I live. And then I also know that there are more than a half an outage every year at my location. It's more like 2 per year, so maybe 4 times the frequency you're suggesting. So I'm wondering, when you calculate averages or medians or anything else, do you count all the little outages that we're detecting that might be enough to just trigger a generator for 5 or 10 seconds, or just cause all of the electronic clocks in your house to reset to 0?
That is a great question. And so first off, my statistics professor in college would be very unhappy that I don't actually know the median. Also a great question, but I don't know the median. So I apologize to my college professor for not remembering what he taught me about medians. But to answer your second question, so the way the grid operates is that when you see those small blips, 5, 10 seconds, that's actually our system operating in a way to resolve an outage by itself. So a good example of that would be a tree branch makes contact with our line, interrupts the electricity from going through the line. The devices see that or feel that or understand that there's something there. So what they do is they close off the circuit for a second, then they reopen it. If that tree branch is still there, interrupting the electricity from going through, they'll close again. And they do that a series of 3 times. Typically the branch will fall down, and then, and then power can be restored. So in those situations where I know it's an inconvenience, and I lost power this weekend at my home, and going around resetting all of the clocks, it's definitely an inconvenience. Those are not actually reportable outages, and I would have to double check to see if we actually capture them. I'm sure we capture them to see that there is an operation on the system, but they are not included in any of the outage information that the DPU, Department of Public Utility, who oversees us, collects. And we're not measured on that because that's actually the system operating to resolve an outage itself. Same for animal contact. You know, if an animal touches one of the insulators on the top of our pole, causes a disruption, circuit closes out, reopens. If it doesn't, if electricity continues to move through it, then it remains on. And then, so unfortunately, yeah, those are not captured in the data. But again, that is the system just operating by itself to resolve the outage, so that it's not an extended outage. Does that answer your question?
Yes, mostly. I do know, I believe I know that the vast majority of our miles of line in Massachusetts, in Manchester, are underground, aren't they?
You do have a
So
significant amount of underground line.
Are you purposely assigning blame to all these tree limbs that wave around and fall off because that's what's going on, or are there other sources like moisture, degraded underground cable, et cetera, that might cause interruptions in the underground circuits?
Yeah, that's just my go-to example. Is just a tree branch. Yeah, that's usually.
We all do that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Faith.
No problem. Well, thank you everybody for your time. Thank you, Town Administrator, and to the board. I really appreciate it, and to the community. Thanks for letting me come and present. I did take some notes on some follow-up questions, so I'll make sure to share that. And like I said, continuing conversation, and you know, once we're allowed to be back in person, or if we want to have a spring event and we talk about electricity and you know how you're served to the community on a more a grander scale, I can bring out we have this like tractor trailer where we have a transformer, we have all the different devices, and we can kind of do like a touch a truck and show and tell of you know how electricity works. So like I said, continuing conversation, more to come, and it's nice to meet so many of you. So
Well, thank you very much, Faith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Happy holidays.
You too.
You as well.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the annual liquor license renewals, which is our next agenda item. We're running a little bit behind, but we're not doing too badly. We have a list that was given out in our packet. And these are existing licenses that need to be renewed annually. There are 13 businesses on the list. You've seen them. Are there any questions about renewing those licenses? So far, we have had no complaints about any of the establishments on the list. And all the paperwork is in order and ready for our approval. So I will entertain a motion for renewing the 13 licenses for Crosby's, Dynamic Restaurant Group, Alley's, Beach Street Cafe, Neighborly Restaurant Group, Manchester Fitness Club, Seabreeze Variety, Helen's Bottle Shop, Harrigan's, YGGBG, doing business as Bravo by the Sea, 7 Central Hospitality, the Antique Table, Singing Beach Club, Emerald Bailey, Post 113, and the Manchester Yacht Club.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
chair votes yes. That's good. That's a catch-up item then.
So it'd be great if folks could come by in the next couple of days to actually sign the actual renewals. So we'll have those lined up on the counter in the office.
And a large set of pens, since there's 13 signatures required.
Exactly.
Okay. Our next item on our agenda is singing beach tags and seasonal passes. Greg, do you want to tee this one up?
Sure. So at your last meeting, you decided to go forward with a change in how we can distribute the parking stickers. So instead of distinguishing between a beach sticker and a regular residential sticker, parking sticker, we'll make it just one parking sticker that's good any part of town, and that we'll distribute those free of charge through the excise tax billing process. So people can expect to receive their sticker for their car. It'll have the license plate on it already. You'll receive that through your excise tax bill. So that's a change, and from the past where people picked up a beach sticker and also received 2 seasonal tags to gain access to the beach itself. So instead of buying a beach sticker and getting 2 tags and then getting additional tags for additional family members, anyone will need to pick up beach tags if you're between the ages of 12 and 65. Those younger or older do not need tags. They get on without being charged. So a new process for that. At your last meeting, you had indicated wanting to explore the possibility of a differential price, resident versus non-resident. We've never had that distinction. We've always charged the same for the tags to access the beach, whether it be the day pass or the season pass. And I would say staff is reluctant to make that distinction, as it would, I think, become a bit of a nightmare at the beach itself if we're trying to ask for proof of residency as you try to get a beach tag. I think we would be transferring, the problem in the backlog at Town Hall to the backlog at the beach. But an alternative and a way to still perhaps meet your goal of providing a discount to residents would be to offer sort of the early bird special, if I could use that phrase. So folks who obtain their beach tags prior to a certain date, sometime in May, middle of May, or towards the end of May, would be able to purchase the tags for the seasonal tags at a lower price. And then after a certain date, whether it be middle or the end of May, the price would go up for those who haven't obtained them. And in effect, that would accomplish, I think, your goal of having a different price for resident versus non-resident, because most residents can take advantage of getting it early. Most non-residents typically will buy their season pass the first time they come to the beach. That's the norm, and I think that would continue. You may have some people trying to buy them earlier if they knew about the discount, but I don't think you're going to see a flood of non-residents trying to obtain the stickers or the beach tags, prior to their first visit to the beach. I think that practice will continue. So if this is of interest to you, then I think two decisions would be needed. One, what is that discounted price, or is there a higher price after a certain date? And what's the date? So a couple months ago, you did approve increasing the day pass from $7 up to $10. And you also approved increasing the seasonal pass from 20 to 25. So you could keep the early bird special at 25 if you want to go with that slightly higher price, and then go up to 30 or 35 for those who purchases after a certain date. Or you could stick with last year's price of 20 for those who buy it early, and go up to 25 or 30 for those who buy it after a certain date. So I think those are the decisions before you. I would recommend that we don't try to do resident versus a non-resident at the beach. I think that will be cumbersome and cause some conflicts. And I'd like to try to avoid that. And I think we can achieve your goal, as I say, through this differential in price based on when you purchase the seasonal tag.
Becky.
Thank you, Jeff. Greg, do we have an idea? That's an editorial, we obviously. Do we have an idea of how much money we're talking about if we say do 25 for the early bird and 35 for the after that season pass? Or the
Well,
number of people?
Right. So, in a normal year, we are bringing in a few $100,000 through beach fees. Beach stickers, beach tags, day passes, and seasonal passes. I don't have a breakdown of seasonal versus day. But obviously that depends on the weather. On a hot weekend when people feel comfortable taking the train, that's when we do quite a business at the beach. They will take in thousands of dollars on a warm summer day. Most of that is the day pass for those hot days. But as I say, during a season, normal season, we are $250,000 worth of income through the stickers and tags.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, are they taking in cash?
Yes.
Okay. So in other words, the 25, 35 could end up being pretty significant.
Yes, it always has been.
Okay, thank you.
Ann?
I just wanted to comment that this whole thing is working out very well for those of us who are over 65 and who used to pay $10 for a beach sticker. Now it's free. Thank you.
And I wish you hadn't mentioned that. Eli.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I think per beach pass, I lean for the residents towards the $20 number for an early bird line of thinking. It's already, so the previous, if I understand this correctly, previously we'd sell it, you get two with a beach sticker, and that was $35. So at $25, we'd be going up to $50 for the equivalent. We're already going to be going up to $40 for residents for the same effect with at $20 per pass. And I would roll the early bird date back to May 1. There are plenty of years when we have nice warm days in early May. And I imagine that it'd be nice to be able to quantify it. But I imagine that we might take a pretty good hit on the revenue side if there were an early bird special running very far into May at all for non-residents.
John? John, you need to unmute.
Sorry. I do agree with the $20, and I also agree with Ann's comment. In fact, that it's a real good deal for us, for some of us anyway. But I've got a question here. The walk-on on the beach for a season is $25. And are they going to have to pay more if they go to town hall? And are they going to know this? They may know it retrospectively, but are they going to know this by May 1st of this year? That the walk-on pass is $25. And if I'm them, I'll say, I'll buy it at the beach. It's $5 less. Unless we do something about that.
I'm not quite following, John. You're saying
The
that,
$25 is a season pass at the beach,
right,
okay? A season pass after May 15th goes to $30 or $35 each. That's more than 25.
well, I think you were suggesting that we keep it at 20 for the early bird, and then it goes to 25.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. But
So we would promote residents purchasing their tags. They can do it online. We can do it without having to come in prior to May 1st. We would promote the sale of the season tags to residents, in February, March, and April, and encourage them to take advantage of the lower price.
but the price is 30 or 35, or at least in your copy, that's what you said. But earlier in that paragraph, day passes are $7 and season passes are 25, going to say 25. That's what we
No,
proposed raising both.
we raised, John, we raised day to 10 and season to 25 previously.
That's right. Okay, so that's now at $25.
Right, we have to change that.
That's, I'm saying that this does not add up with the 30 or 35 number.
Right, we have to change that.
Okay, the two numbers have to more or less agree. The in season, if you buy a season pass in season, that number, and you buy it at town hall, it should be the same number or it should be less than if you were to just show up at the beach.
So I think our thinking was that it would be less if you buy it prior to
May 1st.
Eli suggested May 1st.
I'm not discussing that. Yes, I agree with that. But if
And
you
then
show
maybe-
up at town hall after May 1st, what do you pay?
You pay the 25.
You pay 25.
You wouldn't get the discount because you didn't do it early.
Right. So how much would you pay? 25? Okay.
25.
All right. I agree that number makes sense, because if you were to show up at the beach a month later and say, I want to buy a season pass at the beach, it would also be 25.
Right.
Correct. Okay.
Now I'm confused.
No, we were talking about a differential that was a more significant differential than 20 up to 25 after the early bird special. If we're going to get people to act on an early bird special, there has to be the relief from future pain. So I don't think we can hold to the 25 for a seasonal pass after the so-called early bird
Okay.
special.
Well, my question is if I show up on the beach, and I've never been to the beach this year, I show up on July 16th and say I'd like to buy a season pass, how much is that going to cost?
$30.
Right
Or
here on the
whatever.
copy, we've said is that you approved raising $25 for a season pass.
That was in a previous meeting, we did that, but we can
Right.
change that again now since the beach season
All right.
hasn't started.
Okay.
But my thought about this is that we would do $20 season pass per ticket for
Early bird.
anybody prior to May 1st.
Right.
And then later on in Greg's memo, he says, after May 15th, you could adjust the price to 30 to 35 for a season pass.
Right.
Okay, so I think that we should make the season pass $30 or $35 after May 15th.
Correct. Whether you buy it at the beach or buy
If
it.
you go to Good
in town
Harbor
hall.
Beach and park,
Yeah.
it costs you $25 to $30. And any beach now, the price to park alone is going way up.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't see charging for a season pass $30 or $35 as being unreasonable. And town residents, as Greg said, we could really flog it with the cricket, and we'll get Tiffany on this, and she'll
Okay.
she'll make sure that people know.
So long as the price at the beach agrees with the price at town hall,
Sure.
you know, in season. Yeah,
In season, post, early bird.
that's right. When I say in season,
Yes.
when the beach is open.
Understandable, John.
Okay.
So we need to decide what we're doing with in season, post, early bird. Sarah, I see your hand, but let me finish with board comment on this, and I'll take Ann and Becky's comments. And when Eli comes up for air, we'll pick Eli's comment. Go ahead, Ann, and then I'll come back to you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Just, I would lean toward $35 after our cutoff date at the beach, at the town hall. There's a real incentive to get your beach pass early.
Yep. Okay, Becky?
I agree. I was going to say, and I agree with Eli and the 5/1 end date. And I think you do $20 prior to that date, and after that, $35, whether you're doing it for residents or whomever, after that 5/1 date at the beach or at town hall.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Sarah?
I'm going to dispute both Ann and John's premise that this is a benefit to senior citizens. In prior years, a senior citizen has been able to obtain a beach sticker for $10, which includes 2 walk-on passes. If you have 2 cars and 2 seniors, that's 4 walk-on passes, which would have been $20 and is now going to be, what, $50? So you're drastically increasing the cost of the walk-on passes to people who are over 65.
No, they're not being charged at all, Ann.
No, you get today, there's a $10 beach sticker and you get 2 walk-on passes with it.
I understand. And in the future, what we're doing is we're passing out parking stickers
right
to every town resident.
Right.
The beach pass for a senior is, if they're over 65 years old, is free.
Jeff, if I may, Sarah points, is
I want to make
trying
sure
to point
Sarah,
out,
I want to make sure that Sarah's got that. And then, Ann, if you want to clarify, go ahead.
I have friends who are under 65, and sometimes my friends use my beach pass. So Sarah is correct. For those of us elderly who still talk to people who are younger and maybe even take them to the beach, yeah, that's a lot. We're losing.
I agree with Ann. I have children that visit, and so that would cost me more.
So they need to buy a beach pass. Big deal.
Yeah.
It is a big deal.
Why is it a big deal?
No, because
Beach passes were issued to the person who got the sticker.
right. So
Right.
as somebody over 65, I had a right to buy a beach sticker for $10, which included 2 walk-on passes, which were obviously used by people less than 65 because somebody over 65 didn't need a beach pass. So now you're saying that I now need to pay $25 to get those 2 passes to accommodate visitors. So it's an increase.
There's no $25 fee. The fee structure right now is $20.35.
Is
Early
it
bird-
per pass or for 2 passes?
per pass.
So now I paid $10 for 2 passes, and now I'm paying $50 for 2 passes.
No,
And if I had 2 cars,
no.
I was paying $20 for 4 passes, and now I'm paying $100.
Sarah, listen to what I'm trying to tell you. It's confounding. And I know it's a change in the way that we do things. But this structure is saying if you're under 12 and over 65, you don't even need a pass to go onto the beach.
Right, but I used to get 2 passes with my $10 beach sticker, so I could accommodate people between 12 and 65 with those stickers. And now I'm having to pay $50.
Well, no, you're having to pay
40.
$40 if you do it prior to May 1st.
Right. And if I had 2 cars, it's double that. So you're significantly changing what people over 65 were paying for walk-on passes.
But if they're not using the passes, they're giving them to other people to use. Is that the intent?
You have family come visit.
I do. I have family come visit. So I'll
Right.
probably need to buy some passes for them if
Well-
I want to invite them on, or they can buy a day pass for $10.
All I'm saying is you're changing the dynamics for people 65 and over. You just need to be aware of it. That's all I'm saying. It's not a free lunch.
Yeah, we're changing the dynamics. You're right. They don't have to pay $10 for anything.
No, I actually, Jeff, respectfully, I agree with Sarah's point. Before, if I were alone in my house and at age 65 and I had a car and I bought a $10 beach sticker, I'd be able to have a family member come and they could go to the beach, and it cost me $10 to afford that benefit. Now it will cost me more.
Yes, it will. It's a different structure. If the board does not agree with having a different structure, then we can beat this one a little bit further. But my thought is that if you have family members who are going to come to visit you, you buy some passes ahead of time. If you have family members who come to visit you regularly to go to the beach with you or by themselves, then you have them pay the $20 in advance. It's not a big price for someone who's bringing, who's coming to visit you, your adult children coming to visit you. Hey, if you want to come to the beach this year, you're going to have to fork over $40 to me and I'll go buy you 2 passes. I know if my daughter's coming up, that's what she's paying. And she's paying me, and I'll buy the pass for $20. But if the board is not in agreement with that, it's a different structure. And I'm not trying to be say this is a great deal for seniors or not, but it's a different structure where people between the ages of 12 and 65 are going to have a beach pass. And it's not going to come as cheaply as it did for seniors to pass those out to family members. Becky.
Thank you, Jeff. I think that change is always hard, but I feel that with the fastest growing demographic in our town being the senior demographic, and costs for everything are going up. We need to keep up with that. And if the seniors are the ones who are taking the majority of people on the beach for less money, then that's just less money we're going to take in. I think that I'm comfortable with the early bird special being $20 before May 1st, and then after it being $35. Again, change is never easy, but our costs are going up, and I think we need to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay. John?
Yeah, Ms. Ray, I'm just thinking about all of this and my many family members. I mean, I'd certainly be buying 2 passes, so my cost just went from $20 for 2 cars to $40 for 2 passes. They're still going to drive my car to the beach.
Do they have gainful employment?
Yes, they are all independent indivigials.
This is a
Although
distributed.
they're all still on my phone contract. I got to do something about that.
It's a distributed cost.
Yes.
John, if you can figure out what to do about that, please let me know.
Yes. This is a plight for many of us.
Okay, I have 2 community members who have their hands up. I see you, Sue, and I will come to you in a minute. We could go at this for a long time. If the board does not want this to happen tonight, we can change it and move it on to another meeting. But I don't want to, this was scheduled for 10 minutes of discussion. We're now really absorbing 25, 30 minutes on this. And, you know, if this is such an egregious change that we need to really think it through some more, then fine, let's do that. But let me allow the 2 family members, excuse me, the 2 residential members to speak, and then let's make a decision about whether we're going to vote on this tonight. So let me start with Sue Thorne. So you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, now okay. Sue Thorne, 9 Sawmill Circle. My question is on the early bird, is that for residents only, or can somebody from Beverly come in and buy an early bird?
The input from the town administrator and the rec department is, and perhaps the town clerk as well, is that there's no differentiation by residents on any of these passes. There's never been any differentiation by residents on any of these passes. Except for seniors getting a $10 2-ticket beach pass, beach parking sticker.
Okay, thank you. I personally just think it's too bad that we aren't able to give our residents that little bit of extra break.
I don't know that we're going to be putting this out in the Beverly newspaper and the Gloucester Times.
It won't take long.
Well, you know, maybe it won't. Maybe it won't.
Yeah.
But
Thank
currently the price is $25 for a season pass. Before we, excuse me, last year it was $20 for a season pass. So it's really, if you do the early bird, there's no change in the season pass than there was last year. If that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, and that's.
And then we're bumping up the season pass to $35 for after May 1st.
Yeah, I support that. I just think it's too bad not to give residents a little bit of a break and have it early bird only for residents. That's just a comment. Thank you.
Okay. Sandy.
Hi, I'm sort of trying to figure out how the parking for the cars are going to work. So it sounds like every resident is going to be able to park at the beach, regardless of whether they walk on the beach or not. And our excise taxes are not going up. Is that correct?
Oh, excise taxes are state tax, so we can't do anything with that. We just, the town of Manchester just collects them for the state. And I suppose that people could park at the beach and not go onto the beach. I don't understand why they would do that. Only residents are going to have those parking stickers.
Okay.
And that's
and
available to all residents now if they buy beach stickers.
if they buy a beach sticker, but you don't pay anything for a town sticker, but you
Right.
can't park at the beach.
Right,
That
but now
would
that we've
change.
eliminated beach and town differentiation, beach sticker, town sticker differentiation, and we're just gonna have one resident parking sticker.
Okay, so that means that, are you going to up the force of people that are checking the stickers or actually the passes as people walk on? Because a lot of people walk on, they don't get their pass checked. So is that whole system going to change? Is the town going to now have to pay for more personnel at the beach to check all of this? And what it sounds like is, if I am a 3-person household and after May, I'm going to potentially have to pay $90 to have 3 people have passes, or just the 2 people.
105 for a season pass for 3 people.
What?
It'd be 105. We're talking about a $35 season pass fee.
Right. So a 2-person household that used to spend $20 or $25 are now going to spend $70 or more, or $70.
The previous price was $35 for a 2-person household to get 2 stickers and a beach pass and a beach parking sticker. That was the previous price. That's going up $5 for the 2 stickers if you do it early bird.
If you do it early bird, but before you didn't even have an early bird, so.
Right? Right.
Wow. I think this is going to have a lot of implications and
It's
concerns.
probably
so-
going to cause an uproar, and we'll have people burning crosses and pitchforks in front of town hall. I'm not being facetious, and it's change is very hard in this town.
Yeah, I just think that the concern I have is the amount of ability to check. I think a lot of people walk on the beach, they're not checked. There's going to have to be a reconfiguration at the beach.
There is typically a police officer and 2 Parks and Rec people at the beach entrance. At the walkway that goes down onto the beach at the corner of the circle. And to my knowledge, they're checking everybody.
In the past, they really haven't, so it'll be interesting, just something to think about. Thanks.
I don't have that. I don't have that information that they haven't been. As I watch them working, and I have watched them work, they're checking passes. But if that's the case, then you should point it out to them that they're not checking passes when you come through. That you see them not checking passes, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, well, people are coming around the outside of the parking lot. They're going down the boardwalk. There's multiple people on a really busy day. I think that there might be some major things to think about from an operational point of view, just especially if people are paying all this money now, there'll be a concern for that. So just something to think about. Thank you.
Okay. JB, could you identify who you are and where you live?
Hi, it's Jack Burke, 16 Ocean Street. Good evening, everybody. I do agree somewhat with what Sandy has to say. I do think last year that the committee, that the beach people were working much harder to look at the day passes, the beach stickers. However, on a busy day, Sandy is correct. Many vehicles get dropped off at the circle. They go over the wall, they go up the ramp, and the attendants are overwhelmed when it does get busy. That said, I do like the idea of the new system. I was on a committee several years ago where we recommended raising the sticker prices. I think even recently I've communicated with the Board of Selectmen and Mr. Fettisfield that if we did maintain a similar system, we needed to be up to $50 for residents with 2 passes and go up to $25 for the seniors. And I talked about a $10 pass for the walk-ons for a couple of years. Once again, I do agree with this. I don't think the system was designed for us seniors to get the extra passes and pass them on to our family. And I'm one that has done it, and it's been, and grateful that I had it done for a while. I have no problem buying an extra couple of $20 passes for my children and grandchildren when they visit. Thank you.
You're welcome. We may have to revisit all of this if what ends up happening is that the only people on the beach have gray hair. All right,
If
I'd
they
like to
have
know.
hair.
I'd like to know from the board whether you want to vote on this tonight to create these changes that we've discussed. And I would summarize them as no passes necessary for children under 12 or over 65. And day passes $10, seasonal passes $35, seasonal passes prior to May 1st, $20, with an extensive advertising campaign to town residents prior to May 1st.
Jeff, may
I would rather not have further discussion tonight. If we're going to do further discussion, I'd like to move this off to another agenda. If we want to vote on this tonight, we can vote on this, or we should come to a consensus that we're going to move it off to a different agenda, because we spent a long time on this and we have to do some other business.
So you won't, if we make the motion, you're not going to be allowing any further discussion on it? Am I understanding that correctly?
What I'd like, Eli, is to either move it off to another night or make a motion and have a vote up or down on whether we do this.
I have just one comment. And other than that, I'm happy with this.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'd like to move it off.
Jeff, I'd like to move it off because I want to do some informal market research for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
You want to find out if your kids will pay for the passes, John?
That's part of my input, but not the primary.
Okay. Is that the consensus of the board to move this off?
I would much prefer to vote on it right now, even if I can't comment. It's going to take us 20 minutes on another meeting.
I'm not trying to cut off comment. I'm just looking at the time, and it's now closing in on 9 o'clock. And this item was supposed to be done an hour ago. Excuse me, this item was supposed to be done 45 minutes ago. So we're running way behind. And that's why I'm saying let's limit the comments. If you guys want to have comments after the motion, I'm happy with that. We can go ahead and do that. But I don't want this conversation to drag on until 9:15.
Then I move that we adopt a fee schedule for beach tags. People under 12 and over 65 do not require beach tags. People who buy beach tags prior to May 1st pay $20 per tag. After May 1st, the price of the beach tag goes to $35.
Day pass?
$35 a pass. And the day pass is $10.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Limited discussion to the specific motion. Any discussion?
Yes. I think the early bird should be for residents only. And that's not hard to validate.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Any other comments or discussion from the board? I'm sorry, Sandy, this is only from the board. Ready to vote? John, your hand is still up, so I'm. That better? Okay. Eli,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
the chair votes yes. Probably the most unpopular decision that we've made in a long time, other than dispatch. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, so we have an update on Water Policy Protection Task Force and appointments. And so far, we have had one other committee besides the Selectmen propose a member for the task force and an alternate. And that is the planning board. The member is Ron, and the alternate is Sarah Creighton. As a board, we can accept or ask for other choices, but this is an up or down vote to support that recommendation or not. So I would, Ann, go ahead.
I move to accept the planning board members of Ron and Sarah as the alternate.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Becky, your hand went up. Did I go too fast?
No, this was, what about the Concom? They have,
Oh, hold on. We're doing these one at a time.
okay.
Okay, so Ms. Jakes is yes, Mr. Bowling is yes, Mr. Round is yes, Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
and Mr. Palmer Turner votes yes. The other board that's reported to us is us. And we did not, I don't know that we formally voted the two members on, but so that was John Round as member and Ann Harrison as alternate.
If I recall,
Go ahead, Eli, go ahead.
if I recall, I thought that we did vote that. I thought that we decided since we had, I thought Ann brought that point up at the meeting and said.
I
why
thought
can't
we
just-
did too.
Okay, so if we voted them, thank you very much for stepping forward to do that. Greg, you were in touch with Steve Gang about Concon.
He and I did not connect to confirm that they voted that. So if, at least he's my picture, he's still here. I think he's still with us.
I am, if you please.
Mr. Gang is here.
Yes,
Are you confirming that you and Ashley Oakes and David Lumsden are the three Concom working group members?
Unfortunately, I think I'm just $1 short of that, Mr. Chair. We made that decision months ago, but we haven't formalized it. My bad, and we'll do it shortly.
You don't have another meeting, I assume, this week
No, our next meeting is the 13th.
of January.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, well, our meeting is on the 18th. Our next meeting is the 3rd, and then we have a meeting on the 18th. I need to hear back from Stream Team and Open Space and Recreation. So
Also, if I may, have you formalized or made a decision about the Board of Health member? I'm not sure they've chosen an alternate, but I know they voted a member a few weeks ago.
let me follow up and confirm that. So
Thank you.
I will follow up with the Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee, Board of Health, and Stream Team. And if you can get the members in your group aligned, we should have a committee on the 18th.
Excellent. But would it be all
Well,
right?
we
to ask-
actually, we still have our at-large group, but you sent me that information today, and I'm going to get back to you about it. We'll put the ad in soon.
Excellent. Would it be too much to ask for a straw? Well, not the straw poll, but just an indication of whether there are any difficulties with me, Ashley Oakes, and David Lumsden.
That, what I'd like to see is, I'd like to see each board make their recommendations and vote on them, and then we will affirm those recommendations.
Very well.
Unless there's some significant issue around a particular member, and that's unlikely.
Mhm.
Okay, so the answer to your question is, if the Concom wants the three of you to do it, the Board of Selectmen is not going to object. So we do need to affirm it. In fact, we would love to have the three of you do it. I would. I gotta stop. I gotta stop using the ecumenical we. That's not. I don't have that kind of power in this committee.
Well, you need to learn to wave like the Queen.
I don't know how she does that, and I can't wear those hats. Okay. Steve has sent information to me, a write-up to me that I just received on the weekend, and I'm going to be talking to Tiffany about that and Steve about that to get that out for at-large members. Okay, so we'll have this committee hopefully fully represented by the 18th, by our meeting on the 18th. Thank you. Okay. Next item. Some of these go really fast. Exit interview policy, final reading and approval. I think I captured the edits correctly, but if there's any question about those edits from our last meeting, I sent that out to everybody Friday. And did you get the copy I resent? Yeah, good. Okay. Any comments?
Jeff, I have one question or observation.
Yes.
I know that when we discussed it a couple of weeks ago, we had discussed the timing of when these exit interviews would be conducted, and the
Yes.
closer it is to the date of departure, the better. And that's not addressed in here. And I would perhaps suggest that maybe we ought to put something in. It should be within 2 days of the last day of work or something like that.
I thought that. So when you say within 2 days, do you mean in the last 2 days that the person is working?
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments on the board in terms of timeliness? Go ahead, Ann. You need to unmute yourself, please. Ann?
I have a comment. It has nothing to do with time limits.
Okay, hold that comment for a second. Let's deal with time limits first. Any other comments on time limits? So we could insert a sentence. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say that when we give time limits, I would say I just stipulate when possible. Or if possible, sometimes it might be more.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen, so this is the policy as it's fine, as it's currently written. So you said within 2 days of their departure, if possible?
Yes, I don't know if you need to worry about language. Sometimes people depart, but their departure date isn't in fact, then they go on vacation because they have some vacation days that they use. And so their last day is not really their last day in the office.
Right.
But I you know, I wouldn't worry about, that's where this if possible comment that Becky mentions.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pragmatic issue there.
You want to put it in item 3, and participation is at the discretion. The exit interview should be held on one of the last 2 days that the employee is working.
Yeah, it fits in either number 1 or number 3, either one.
Actually, I thought about it in number 2 because we have questions should be submitted 48 hours in advance of the scheduled interview, the last sentence there. I was thinking dropping it in right before that. Does that?
Or drop it in between 2 and 3.
2.5. On one of the last 2 days. Otherwise, it sounds like a 2-day interview.
Did I capture it?
Yes.
John?
Yes, it does. I'm just wondering if an employee is actively working. That's a little awkward.
Well, you
But I
raised
don't
the
know.
issue, that they could be,
It could be vacation, yes, or something like that.
and it's an if possible, I mean, they may
Yeah.
go out on medical, disability and not come back.
Yep.
When you guys discussed the 48 hours in advance of the scheduled interview, was that to give appropriate notice? And I ask that because I wonder about the case where you have an exit interview scheduled on a Monday.
No, the point in the discussion, Eli, was that.
How's that, Eli?
That's where I was going, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
John,
Yeah.
you were
The discussion, it just needed to be very close to the end of a person's tenure, because these reports can get circulated around within the organization, and the employee may be concerned that he or she may say things that perhaps their immediate supervisor, they'd rather not have their immediate supervisor see that while they're still around.
This is a different, I understand what you're saying, John, but this is a slightly different issue. This is questions being submitted for.
Oh, this is the questions issue.
To the HRO.
Yeah, so just make it 2 working days rather than 48 hours, right?
Yeah, right there. So why don't we use the same language here? Like,
How about, or on
One of the employees' last 2 working days.
Right. One of the last 2 are, one of the employees' last 2 working days.
Employees apostrophe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just say within.
Yeah.
Instead of one of, on one of, you could say within the employees.
Yeah.
Yep, better.
And get rid of one of.
But that brings back into play the whole issue of a 2-day interview.
Well, so I think that's unlikely. I think it allows for a little bit of flexibility if, for whatever reason, there are 2 people involved in the interview process and one is going to be on one day and one's on another.
I think that sounds good.
And I mean, it's unlikely, but it leaves a little hair of flexibility in there. And I think it's reasonable.
Okay, any other tweaks?
Under number 5, I think results of the exit interview will be communicated, blah, blah, blah. I think within 5 business days after the employee's last workday, so that it doesn't get It shouldn't be sent around before the employee has exited, I don't think.
Okay. Yes, okay,
Yes,
all right.
would you like
can
a
I
motion?
Get a motion, please?
Motion to approve the exit interview policy as written on Jeff's screen.
All right. I'll take our final draft and I'll change this to a Word document and distribute it to all of you. Okay?
Okay.
Let me get out of this screen sharing.
So I just had one question.
I
for
just
the-
had a motion. I don't have a second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yes,
Go ahead, Ann.
I agree with the policy. I don't think it belongs in the selectmen's policies. I think it belongs in personnel policies.
So
I
in
would
terms of
accept the
in ter-
friendly amendment.
That's okay. That's not the motion as read. And it does raise an issue of whether personnel policies are changed. If personnel policies can be changed unilaterally by the town administrator.
No, those are approved by you. But we just have to have a slightly different notice process. So the employees need to be put on notice that the personnel policies are changing. I think it does better belong in the personnel policies just because that's where employees look.
Yep.
And I think this is important for them to know about. Obviously, we can let them know about it either way, but in terms of structure of our policies, I think it's a little smarter to have this in the personnel.
So Greg, can we just say as a final item in this policy, that this policy will be incorporated into the employees' personnel policies? Or the town's personnel policy?
So you want it sort of as a twofer? I was thinking you would just hold off until your next meeting and we will warn it as a personnel policy change and then you adopt it then.
I'd like to withdraw the motion that I made. Oh, wait, it was seconded, wasn't it? Never mind.
Yeah, I think the right thing for us to do if we really want to do that is just vote no right now and then bring it back up as a personnel policy.
Okay.
Or you table it, or you can.
No,
just
no,
vote
we
it
have
down.
to, we have to vote no because it's an active motion seconded.
All right.
Okay,
Plus, there was already a first reading on it and noticed to the public that there was going to be a first reading on it. And we got comment as well.
Okay. And your hand is still up. Is that because you have another question? Oh, okay. So I'm going to take a roll call vote with the intent that if you vote no, that we bring this back as a personnel policy on our next agenda. Mr. Bowling,
No.
Mr. Round,
No.
Ms. Harrison,
No.
Ms. Jakes,
No.
and the chair votes no. Okay. That was fun. Review of selectmen policies. Ann, do you want to?
Right, you gave us a list of policies that you wanted us to review. And they are the procedure for reporting accidents, the erasing of tapes, the policy on policies, and the use of town council. I have a number of suggestions on each of them. I suspect other people do as well. And the one that causes me the most concern is the use of town council. Because in the past, I know the planning board at one point had its own legal fund and could hire representation that was not from the town's legal firm. I don't know why no one followed the policy. I have no idea. So I would like, on that one, I would like to know what town council and what our bylaws actually require in terms of various committees asking to use town council. Greg, do you have any?
Well, it's very helpful to have a gatekeeper in terms of how much town council is being utilized, mainly from a budgetary standpoint and being able to monitor and control the budget. So it doesn't have to be the Board of Selectmen approving all of those contacts. In practice, I have been doing that typically. But I do think it's very helpful to have a single gatekeeper.
Jeff?
Yes, Eli.
Yeah, I tend to agree that a gatekeeper is a good idea, and that it shouldn't be the Board of Selectmen unless there's some sort of special circumstance. Reason being, like the ZBA and the planning board, multiple boards may need to make use of town council in a timely manner. And if we get into the business of having to gatekeep through Board of Selectmen meetings, we're either going to be scheduling a lot of special meetings, or we're just going to be clashing gears all the time. And I'll bet you that's what Sarah Mellish was going to say.
Well, I wouldn't want to second guess ever what Sarah Mellish is going to say. Hang on one second, Sarah. I'm the current existing policies that this is supposed to go through the Board of Selectmen, I think that I agree, I certainly agree with Eli that that's cumbersome. But we don't follow that policy. I think that what's important is that in terms of approving timely access to town council, that goes through the person who's most available to do that, which is Greg. But I think that the results of those kinds of conversations also need to come back to the Board of Selectmen. Or I'm not sure whether just to the board that made the request. I mean, I don't know that we want to get into the arcane things that the ZBA might want to know from town council when they're in the midst of dealing with, for instance, this 40B issue. But I think we need to build a structure that's more responsive and more in line with what practice is, that also has checks and balances on both sides. So having said that, Anne, have you had a chance to comment on this?
Having talked about all of them, I'm having trouble seeing how we're going to go forward on all of these policies as a large group. I am perfectly willing to work with Greg and anyone else to refine them and present alternatives, but as a free-form discussion, this is going to take up an awful lot of time. And I think you should hear Sarah on this particular I'm
going to call on Sarah, but my practice, Ann, is to
hear us
first poll the board. So and you had your hand up. Sarah. Would you like to make a comment on this?
Sorry. I thought, so the zoning board of appeals is seeing many more applications. And as valuations in Manchester increases, people want to increase the density of their properties. And I think that with the 40B proposition before us and many other opportunities, that we need to look to the planning board with respect to zoning. And we need to figure out where our opportunities lie. And we're very challenged. The 40B, we just received communication tonight. The developer may have some issues with the state. I'm not sure what those are. And you know, it's like challenging for the boards. We have 3 applications before the zoning board of appeals every month. And it's like crazy. That's what I have said.
So how does that affect the policies related to town council?
So because of the complexity of the issues before us, we need more town council services. So we have one before 34 Tappan Street. And we have the applicant for the owner and the applicant for butters, and the attorneys are duking it out. And to be honest, it's above our area of expertise to figure out who should be responsible. So we need to go to town council to get involved.
Okay, put on your FinCon hat for a minute. How do we do this? I thoroughly understand that the complexity of the issues that the ZBA is dealing with are such that you need access to town council and that it needs to be streamlined and not coming through the Board of Selectmen for sure. I don't know that any of us disagree with that, but if you put on your FinCon hat for a minute, how do we deal with this budget-wise?
It's a challenge.
It is.
You know, what we've seen since COVID is butters are home and they're paying attention.
We're looking out the window and seeing those trucks coming in.
Right, and 70% of the properties in Manchester are non-conforming. And so it comes before us. And it's really a challenge. And we you know, when we have attorneys on the homeowner and the abutter, we just need town council.
Agreed. Okay.
And it's
So-
increasing.
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, so in practice, what has been happening that I'll, either Sarah or Gail as new clerk to the ZBA or Sue Brown might say, is it all right if we use town council on application X? And I think, 99% of the time I say, absolutely, go forward. There might be one or two times when I say, oh, wait a minute, I think I've got some information on that I can share. But most of the time it's a green light. I mean, I'm not holding that back, but it is helpful to know. And again, that's why I say that gatekeeper role I think is important. And we just have to do our best estimating on year to year what level of use of town council are we going to have, and that's what the reserve fund is for. We will definitely be tapping that pretty heavily this year. We may need to get a supplemental appropriation this year because of the high expenses in legal counsel. I mean, the 40B alone is going to be quite high.
I mean, I have two applications which are outside of 40B, which are contentious, and we need town council.
Right.
Everyone wants to do everything as the value of properties increase.
So the check and balance, I mean, your comment about that, Jeff, is also correct. So we can do it either on a monthly or a quarterly basis in terms of an update to the Board of Selectmen about what level of town council use have we had over the past month or 3 months, however often you want to take a look at that. But we can certainly provide that. We get very detailed invoices from town council. It's broken out by topic and the various 15-minute increments on those topics.
And she doesn't break it down into 5-minute increments.
Right.
Okay.
So the basic construct.
This begs the question that Ann's raised, which is, how do we try and achieve the goal that we set out in August to review these policies without getting bogged down into long discussions about each individual policy? This one is particularly tough because it involves a lot of money. It involves procedures that aren't being followed currently, so it does need to be updated. And the structure of those procedures that replace them, people may have different viewpoints on. So
if you want to provide the guidelines, we can follow.
we will definitely have guidelines.
Thank you.
I'm thinking more in terms of guardrails when it comes to the budgetary issues. And I'm not just trying to be facetious about that.
The challenge is we have only a couple of weeks between applications to make the decisions.
Yep, understood. Understood. And the challenge is that situations with an application as complex as 40B
Right.
Require a lot of flexibility and a lot of time with legal counsel.
Right. We even seeing it non-40B.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like crazy.
Okay. Andrew, you have your hand up. Is this in relationship to our fascinating discussion about town council?
Yeah, it's just a quick thought to what Sarah was talking about with the challenges of applicants needing a lot of council help. Could you charge the applicant half of the town council fee? That would kind of put a feedback on, preventing too much use of that. That's all.
Since the applicant doesn't have control over how often we need to consult with town council, I don't even think it's legal to do what you're describing. But even if it were, it would put the applicant in a position of not having control over us making decisions about their finances.
And Jeffrey, we are making a recommendation to increase our fees to cover some of the expenses.
Got it.
We think it costs us $750 per application.
Okay.
And we charge much less than that. So we're working towards sustainability.
Sustainability might say that you would have to charge even more than that to cover those that require lots of legal counsel.
Yeah, we're aiming for $400.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that comment, Andrew. Let's come back to Ann's comment.
If I can suggest a procedure for dealing with the meta issue. I think I have heard what I would need to propose an alternate. I don't know that it's should be a selectman's policy, but an alternate statement of how town council, so that we don't have groups that feel that they can go off and spend money without permission. But what I would like to suggest is that I take these four and make changes that I think reflect the interest of the board and share them with Greg and Eli if Eli's still willing to do this. And I will have them in shape for people to look at the next meeting.
What's going to prevent the board from then saying, well, but what about this?
Well, what I would propose.
I'm just trying to understand the process here.
What I would propose is that board members are required to submit their comments on the policy in advance of the meeting, and discussion in the meeting be restricted to the comments that are made in advance of the meeting.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ann.
I think anything that's going to be discussed at the meeting should be available to everyone a week before the meeting.
So what we would do would be, and I mean, the biggest thing most of my notes that I've made all along are just so minimal that I figure, do you want all 5 Board of Selectmen people sending in these very obvious minimal
No, let me
changes?
send out something that's already got the executive secretary replaced by the town administrator and the right number of members of the Board of Selectmen and the spelling corrections and some sort of formatting. So try and take care of those things that I think are obvious problems.
Right.
And then send them out, review those with Eli and Greg and send them to the whole board.
And then my next comment is the other items that don't seem minimal to me are ones that seem as if they need the eyes of town council. Those are the kind of two things I've encountered. Okay, I am happy to do what is going to be most productive in the least amount of time.
Absolutely.
And you'll send them out to the extent that it's practical, maybe in track changes. I mean, the policy that you picked out is probably one of the 2 or 3 most, oh, good grief, what do we do here? Because the current policy is not necessarily being followed. And we're not saying that the current policy that's written is the right one. That's got to change too. And at some point you look at track changes and say, there's too much red here. I can't understand what's going on.
I think it's better not to send it out as track changes. For example, the policy on accidents.
Right.
Yeah.
There's not a word that remains after I get rid of the executive secretary and Charlie Lane.
Right.
But I think it's probably worth having a policy on reporting accidents, and probably it belongs in the personnel policies and not in the selectmen's policies. But so track changes look like a really bad solution to that.
For many of them, I think for some of them, maybe it's just a few little things, but
I can print
you've
them
used your
out.
judgment.
I can print them out side by side. So you have what exists and what's suggested side by side on the page.
I think that's a formatting nightmare.
I've been living with formatting nightmares.
I know. I'm
Yeah,
aware
that's
of
right.
that.
That's in all of this. So you should send out track changes and then accepted track changes. But
Talk to my sister.
Sarah?
Sarah, you need to mute.
Sorry.
I'm happy with looking at what we originally had and holding up to it, what you come forward with. I think the reason I say it's a formatting nightmare is that to do that, you'd have to go to landscape, and then you're going to have to bring it all back.
I'm going to have to work on each policy as its own file, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway, if people are happy with a copy of the whole set and individual new policies, that's much easier.
I would ask that you tag in a footer what version it is, because we've already had 5 versions, 4 or 5 versions.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe 3 or 4 versions, but I'm so bleary-eyed on this that it looks like more. But if you could just tag it at the bottom and say this is the December 20th version, so we know which version we're dealing with.
Mhm.
And again, I thank you. Eli, are you gonna, do you want to stay with this, or do you want one of us to join in?
I'll stay with it.
I'm not trying to push you if you don't want to do it. But you've got some historical understanding of all this.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in. All right. Moving on. So the next step in is that you, Eli, and Greg will try to let's just see if you, Eli, and Greg can come up with a solution to the town council policy. Okay, just stick to that one. The accident one, I understand that because the board is responsible for responding to any lawsuits, that they wanted to understand what their liability might be. I think $10 was low even at the time that the policy was written in 1987. But I think we just leave the others alone for now. And let's just focus in on this town council one and see if we can get, because that's really germane right now.
Okay.
Okay. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda, and it says approve meeting minutes for the 1st, the 20th, and the 6th of December.
We only had the first.
We only got the 1st.
Yeah.
And when I sent changes in, Gail said that she wasn't going to be able to get to the changes until next week. So I'm a little concerned that we're falling behind. And the Gail's got quite a workload now. It's not just theoretically, our minutes are supposed to be posted within 30 days of our meetings.
Yeah, so you can post the draft prior to your approval. I think once we get through this backlog, we'll be in much better shape.
Okay. I don't know how we can approve the minutes for the 1st until we hear from Gail that the submitted edits are okay. She's got it.
And I didn't get home from work in time to open the email to look, so I haven't seen them.
And it's going to be tight on our next meeting because we're coming in right after the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
3rd. Hopefully we'll be able to get November cleaned up on the 3rd. And I want to pass over the consent agenda. Any objections?
Nope.
Okay. Town administrators report.
Okay, well, the first thing will help on this issue. We are bringing on board a new executive assistant coming January 3rd. Brittany Jones will be joining us. She comes to us via Swampscott, where she's been the assistant to the town clerk, and has received extremely high praise from her colleagues. about her work ethic and her initiative and suggesting new ways of streamlining paperwork. So that's is something we could definitely benefit from. So look forward to bringing her on and welcoming her the first of the year. So Sharon George has been our interim. She's been helping out a couple of days a week, and she's agreed to stay on first to help with the transition with Brittany, and then has agreed also to continue on beyond that, and will be helping helping on the planning board side. So she'll be taking on the clerk works of the planning board. And that will allow Gail to focus on the ZBA, and which has a lot right now with the 40B in particular, but also their regular meetings, as Sarah was just indicating, are quite busy. And she'll also continue with the finance committee, as well as the school committee. So Gail will continue to have her hands full and continue to do a good job for us.
I mean, Gail's got not only that, she also has the Board of Selectmen.
Well, but Brittany will take that over.
Brittany will take that over.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that'll help with the overload.
All right.
And then Sue Croft as our special projects coordinator and grants assistant will be providing the staff support to the Water Resources Protections Task Force, and help that committee in between the meetings and doing the legwork, research, et cetera, that at least some of it, obviously not all. There'll be specialists hired as well.
That's great.
But she'll be able to provide good support for that effort.
Good.
And then, again, not for tonight's discussion, but I did include in the packet a new org chart, just sort of listing all the committees and what is a very flat structure that we have. And it's really just a thought piece. I would like to spend some time at a future meeting talking a bit about our structure and who reports to whom and how we might improve on that structure. So again, not for tonight's discussion, but a little bit of materials for you to review and think about. And again, we had hoped to bring to you the final version of the contract for the composting facility with Black Earth. There's still some discussions going back and forth. I think the biggest last area remains to clarify just what sort of value engineering that Black Earth wishes to do. We have an approved design. It's been approved by the state. Black Earth has an interest in fine-tuning that design in order, from their perspective, to try to save dollars. And we just need to know what the details are of those before we can sign off. So that's where things stand. We're hoping that that Black Earth will be able to do that in short order, and that we'll be able to bring to you the draft the contract for your final approval. I know you wanted some time to review it prior to your meeting, so we'll make sure that you have at least a week's have that in your hand a week before you have to weigh in on it, so that you have some time to go over it. So that hopefully will be coming to you soon as we finalize some of these last items. But we are anxious to move it forward so that we can get that project underway. And then just lastly, obviously wishing everyone happy holidays. I will be out of the office for most of next week. I'll be back in on Thursday to get ready for the 3rd, but we'll be out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week.
Okay, Greg, is it possible for you to send us the Black Earth contract as it exists now?
Sure, I can do that. Yes, absolutely.
Would that be helpful to board members? Because I feel like I'm dealing with this thing that's out there, and if you're going to bring it forward on the 3rd and expect us to be able to respond, I'd like to see where it is now. I mean, if there's small changes that are going to happen, that's fine. But it would be helpful to see it now.
Sure, no, let me get that out to you tomorrow.
I agree.
That's Merry Christmas from Greg.
Yes, nice, easy reading.
Okay.
I have a question for Greg. Are we going to be getting information from, we were supposed to have gotten some questions from Todd answered. We were going to
Yes.
get them.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Are those forthcoming?
We have Todd's answers. He was checking out one last thing.
Okay.
And he had the bulk of it done before this meeting. And we didn't put it on the agenda because there were so many things on the agenda.
Okay, so
that'll be on the
the
third. That'll be on the agenda on the third, and Todd's aware of that.
Okay, let me just make that. All right. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Greg, I didn't mean to cut you off on
Nope, that's fine.
Oh,
that. Okay. Andrew, you had a comment?
Yep, I just wanted to just put my 2 cents of where I think we are with the contract. I think we're basically there. My understanding is that the town council's mother or mother-in-law passed or something. And so they're out for, I don't know, a week. But the construction value engineering aspects, that I don't think that should hold up the contract, because what I'm providing is just a preliminary list, which most of it I've already provided in the RFP. And there's a whole slew of construction submittals that need to happen after the contract is signed anyways. So what I'm providing to Chuck shouldn't really hold it up. Like, there's nothing real new there. It's
But Andrew, if those submittals are substantially different than the approved design, I don't want to be haggling about that at every submittal. We need to know that now. Unless you commit to, otherwise we're going to hold your feet to the fire and do what is approved in the design.
right. Well, in the design, in the specs, it says that the final design of like the aeration system is up to the contractor, like, to be put forward in the submittals. So, I mean, so we can submit that now, and later we'll submit it in more detail. So I just don't think it needs to be contingent. I don't know if the contract needs to be contingent on that at the moment.
That seems to be a point of disagreement between you and Greg, and I don't want to argue that out tonight. I think that we've got this annual downtime starting this week for the rest of the year, and we're meeting very early on January 3rd. I think at that time, hopefully the board will be up to speed enough to be able to participate in a discussion about that. So
Okay. Well, I'll submit I'll submit these things to Chuck as they currently stand.
that'd be great. And if you have some that are still in process, Andrew, you may want to submit them as well, saying this is in process, so that, because the town needs its final list.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we've been working on engineering diligently since July.
Okay,
And we are close to being ready to submit for a building permit.
okay.
So that's been our goal.
Okay. Thank you for all the work that you and Andrew are doing on this contract, Greg. And if you can send us the draft, that would be really helpful so that we can start to get up to speed.
Yep, we'll do.
Thank you, Sandy, for hanging in till the very end, and Steve. I wish everybody a wonderful holiday and a happy new year, and we will see you in 2022.
Motion to adjourn, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody.
Second.
Roll call vote, Mr. Round.
Yes, and happy holidays to everyone.
I'll have a gift certificate for beach stickers in your stocking, John.
My kids will appreciate that.
Just remember, it has to be under a certain dollar amount to be legal.
An expensive cup of coffee.
I think if I do it before the 1st of May, I get a 2.5.
Yeah.
I get 2.5 of them. Okay. Eli,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Podmaturno votes yes. Thank you, Greg. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you,
Enjoy your
everybody.
time
Gail,
away.
Take care.
good night.
Let's hope for a better year.
Oh,
Bye,
God.
Gail. Thank you.